Welcome to the afternoon session of the 8th NTNU European Conference. I hope you enjoyed the lunch. Don't be shy, say yes or no. Good, very good, very good. Because I want to see if you are attentive or you're going to sleep. Because after lunch, you know, you're always having these kind of challenges, keeping people awake. So to keep you awake in the afternoon, we have prepared a very special program that starts from some initial, even if you want, out-of-line presentation, but you will discover that they are not so much out of line. And we are going also to invite the chair of the parallel session to give you a bit of overview about what has been the main outcomes of the sessions. And then we will close with a final panel debate where we are going to a bit look into the future. So we will play a bit of crystal ball exercise, of course not pretending to have any special decision taken, but it's good to reflect and maybe brainstorm about what could be the future political scenario where the FP10 is going to be designed. So rather than talking about more funding, more excellence, missions yes, mission no, let's see what is the scenario where we are going to work in the future. So I'm very happy to have on stage to warm up all this Professor Terje Andreas Eikemo from NTNU, which made a very interesting study, and I think it was a very interesting warm-up because I suspect we are going to get a lot of provocation points for the follow-up session. So Terje Andreas will talk about when education makes the difference. So let's show what are the arguments that we can also advocate to ask for more money for research and innovation. Terje, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, can you see the slides? That's I can see my first page. If I should I push on something like this? But in the meantime, until the first slide is on board, I can tell you that I will be talking about education to what seems to be a very educated audience. Are you ready for some more inputs? Do you have the capacity to increase your knowledge level? Yes. I have been asked to be direct, perhaps even a bit provocative. So, Massimo, challenge accepted. Yes. But I can assure you that all statements I make during the next 14.5 minutes will be made on the grounds of solid scientific evidence. I'm a bit selective today, so all the research you see today is from our group, from Chain, and from our partners around the world. So when education makes a difference, my name is Terje Andreas Eikemo, and I'm a professor of sociology. So I'm from the social sciences. I've heard a lot today in the technological parts of the presentations that social scientists are needed. I'm leading Chain, and I'm also the chief editor of a very nice Nordic journal of public health. So it worked. Yes. So I would like to start my presentation by having a look at the future. Are you ready for that? Having a look at the future. What will the future look like? That will be of relevance for us. Now, together with the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation that I mentioned earlier, IHME, we show that the world will become increasingly educated. And what does that mean? What happens when we become more educated? Fertility declines. And that will happen everywhere. Have a look at this. These are the fertility declines that we expect to see until the year 2100. And the consequences of that is that population growth will stagnate and decrease quite radically to 8.8 billion people. So there will be 8.8 billion people in 2100 at the end of the century. And the implication of that is that all countries, almost all countries, will have to become more liberal in terms of labor immigration, of course. And economic growth will stagnate. And power structures in the world will change radically. Now, a key challenge are the high fertility rates in sub-Saharan Africa. You can see the red line there. And we estimate that by 2100, every second child born on Earth will be born in sub-Saharan Africa. This underscores the need to prioritize this region in efforts to lessen the effects of climate change. It also underscores the urgency of getting children, and particularly girls, into school. For the rest of the world, we are concerned about the increasing burden on women. And why is that? Because they have to give birth and participate in the labor market at the same time. So, we are about to enter a new phase of human development, where education can be seen as a great stabilizer. As this publication in Nature shows, the world was actually largely on track to achieve nearby universal education by 2030. But that was before the pandemic hit us. Children and adolescents were among the most neglected groups during the pandemic, and many of them are not returning to school. So we therefore conducted an in-depth study of the consequences of school closures. So we conducted a global survey among teachers and health professionals in collaboration with the UNESCO Chair for Global Health and Education. And we find that the school closures led to notable disturbances in children's and adolescents' well-being. Health professionals reported that children's mental and physical health declined and that social disconnectedness, including feelings of loneliness, social isolation, increased. Some children also showed signs of back-to-school anxiety. So what should we do then in the next pandemic, or next health crisis, or specifically pandemic? Well, we conclude that we must carefully consider or reconsider our future priority settings whenever school closures come in question again. And when I presented these findings at an international conference in Germany some time ago, I mentioned this, that we need to prioritize child and adolescents at their turn. And a person in the audience raised a hand and asked me, "So that means that you want to kill me?" And I said, "Yes." Education lies in the heart of our societies. It creates knowledge, trust, opportunities, and it is a social vaccine against all preventable conditions and fatal outcomes. But the lack of education has consequences for children and adults, not just in terms of well-being, but educational poverty also kills. And now we're getting closer to the study that Massimo made a teaser about, actually a couple of studies. We already knew that education is important for our health, but we have recently changed the understanding of these links. Before I was about to present those papers, I wanted to tell you a bit more about change, but I actually managed to do that in the beginning of the presentation. But let me just add that during the last few years, one of our key academic partners, IHME, which is leading the Global Burden of Disease study, and Chain, have published a series of studies that is now about to change the global discourse on the health benefits of education. This is the first of two key publications I want to present to you in this matter. So it started in 2021, when we published really a groundbreaking study. I have to say that this is really a step forward in The Lancet, in which we discovered a universal link. Can you imagine? A universal link between education of parents and child mortality, under 5 mortality. So we discovered that every year of education counts equally for our children, for our children's survival chances around the world. And also that our education becomes more important for our children as they grow older. So I'm going to show you some advanced statistics. Are you able to understand this figure? It has a lot of numbers that might be difficult to process. At least these are 2 numbers I want you to remember. So each added year of education among mothers reduces the risk of the child dying before its 5th birthday by 3%. For fathers' education, come on, fathers. Are there any fathers here? You're reducing your risk, the risk of your children dying before their 5th birthday by 1.6%. And I just love this finding. And it was in a period where I myself had really small children. They are still very small. And, well, the bad news is that no country in the world has been able to protect their children from the negative health consequences of educational poverty. The good news is that these results demonstrate that education matters everywhere. And just a few weeks ago, and you see Mirza here again, sorry for all the name dropping, but we made another scientific discovery, which has received significant global attention. And you might have heard of this study because it really went viral from Times Magazine to Forbes and had news all around the world. And the question we asked now was, is the association between our own education and our own mortality also universal? Does it matter where you live for this association? This question has never been answered. Not because it's not relevant, but because it's just too much evidence out there to be able to process all this information in terms of designs and languages. We had no language or time restriction. So with support from NTNU, the Norwegian Research Council, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and our global network of partners, we conducted the largest meta-study that has ever been published in science. The study identified 59 countries, 10,000 data points from 600 articles. Most of the studies, as you can see, were found in the high income settings, highlighting the need for more research in these regions. But the pattern, let's see, I'm going the wrong way, there. The patterns are the same around the globe. Every year of education reduces the risk of dying in a given year by 2%. We did not find differences in effects between countries that have reached different stages of development, meaning that education is just as effective in rich countries as in poor. We even found a protective effect of education that lasts into old age. Education is important, not just for its benefits of health, but now having quantified this magnitude is a significant development. We now need to increase social investments to enable access to better and more education around the globe. But our focus should be on regions where we know that access to schooling is low. Now, these two studies of the importance of education are the result of a really influential, or powerful, I had to say, also collaboration between IHME and Shane, based at NTNU and the University of Washington. And together we have advanced global health by integrating social science into medicine. And as a recognition of this work, the co-founders of the GBD study, now Chris and Emmanuel, they have to excuse me for bringing this picture up, but it was for a public source, so I hope they will accept this. They will receive their honorary doctorates at NTNU on November 15 later this year. And this will mark a further commitment from us to continue the work as an evidence-driven surveillance and intervention center for health equity. The joint network of the GBD study and Chain is probably the largest collaboration in science. In the next round of the GBD study, so if you haven't heard much about the GBD, I hope that you can read a little bit later on, because it's really a study that is used by governments to design and prepare health systems for the coming health crisis. We hope in the next round to have education included as the first social determinant, which will enable us to compare educational poverty as a global risk with all other risk factors in the GBD study. So, for example, what does education mean as compared to smoking or air pollution or temperature changes or unsafe water? Now, we believe that this inclusion will make governmental changes in terms of investments and increase investments, particularly in education, also as a health protective factor. One Health. Now, I've tried to connect the dots a little bit from the conference, including my own talk. So during this conference, we have learned about the health challenges of humans and animal populations on land and water. We have learned that environmental systems are complex and interconnected, and that they are shaped by biosocial contexts. Now, this is why One Health has emerged as a key topic, as an approach to balance and optimize the health of ecosystems. We have learned that we need to develop energy technological solutions, and that we need to stimulate awareness and actions based on a common understanding that all humans, animals and plants, and the environment are interrelated. But this can only be achieved through the education system. NTNU has taken an international lead within One Health. We have put together a team from all the faculties of the university. The local government is on board. They have even funded this, and also several other sectors, to study our biggest lake. The biggest lake in Mjøsa, in Norway, is called Mjøsa, and is also the drinking water source for 100,000 people. Now, the goal of this project is to facilitate value creation, secure water quality, food safety, and a sustainable use of the lake, and use this knowledge as a global example on how we can maintain also other ecosystems elsewhere in the world. So we are using an advanced monitoring system, an observational pyramid that you can see to the upper right, where we have satellites and underwater drones that are monitoring emissions from industry and runoffs from agriculture. We are mapping archaeological monuments. We are identifying bombs and ammunition waste in the water. We are studying historic trends in child mortality that can be related to water quality over time. We are analyzing the supply of meltwater, and we are mapping the use of the lake, of the population, and much, much more. And taken together, we are showing by example what is possible to do when we remove disciplinary lines and sectoral lines. Now, Mission Mjøsa connects all the dots from the parallel sessions. In a concrete example, it shows that One Health is not only a theoretical concept, but that it can be studied and applied if we are willing to invest resources and connect disciplines and sectors to study a very concrete ecosystem. But we need to promote this kind of planetary level thinking in schools, and not just in the medical sciences, but in all teaching and early on. This, of course, implies that we must remove all barriers to accessing education in the first place. This is my concluding slide. So I'm going to try to bring all these views together, where education was in the heart of it. If you are born into social disadvantage or educational poverty, this will also increase your chances of living, working, aging, also in poor social conditions. These are chains that needs to be explained and broken. In our center, we do this in a chain of policy, research, and practice partners who are with us in this fight for social justice. But we are not stronger than our most vulnerable social, demographic groups and regions. We need to strengthen the weakest links in this chain. So we need to improve access to schooling everywhere, most urgently among girls in sub-Saharan Africa. The global fertility decline also tells us that we need to strengthen the position of women everywhere. And we need to develop effective green technologies and make them accessible and acceptable for all social groups. And we need to integrate a One Health approach in schools to promote environmental awareness. The sum of all this is what makes education the great global stabilizer and equalizer. So, thank you for your attention. You're really quiet, and that is a good sign, or a very bad sign. And follow us on social media, and help us in our mission to reduce the unfair and avoidable inequalities in the world.
Interesting warm-up, huh? You already answered also to all the questions that I'm going to give to the panel, but that's another story. Jokes apart, before entering the final panel, I would like also to provide, as you followed this morning, 3 parallel sessions, and you couldn't be in all the 3 places at the same time, I would like to invite the chairs of the session to join me on stage to just give a bit overview about the main outcomes of the session. So I would like to invite Siri, Granum, Carson from the Ocean section. Johan Hustad, I'm studying Norwegian, no? And someone told me that when you study Norwegian, your English start to be failing. That's apparently the effect. So, Johan Hustad from the energy sector, and Marius Wideroe from the health. As I am Italian, I have the habit to start from women. So I hope you, as a Nordic woman, don't get offended if I give you the right to speak first.
Never offended if I get to speak first.
That's very good, very good. So, what were the elements you discussed, and what are the outcomes that you can derive out of it? Siri.
Well, let's try to see how much we can squeeze in from 1.5 very full and interesting hours in this brief summary. But the session's name was, of course, Oceans 11. Oceans 10. It was Oceans 10, but it was inspired.
This was the movie.
Yes, it was inspired by the movie and by the film series Oceans 11. I started with Oceans 11. There wasn't any Oceans 10 in this series until today, of course, but we had a very nice plot with very intriguing characters like all the others oceans in that series. So. And specifically what we were discussing was how can we make sure that the oceans, seas and inland waters through the framework programs continue to be a source of value for the European population rather than, as we said, a victim of a heist in the form of overexploitation, pollution and biodiversity degradation. So we had, let me see. The overall questions that we started up to discuss what are the lessons from the first phase of mission orientation for the large and complex hydrosphere, trying to sort of cover seas, oceans, and inland waters. Are we managing to restore our oceans and waters through this approach? And where does this fit in the overall framework program context? And then also, how does it fit with this very complex and very ambitious setup of the Sustainable Blue Economy Partnership? Can this actually carry the burden of transforming largely unsustainable ocean industries through research and innovation? And then finally, we were looking towards the upcoming EIT knowledge and innovation system for the water, marine and maritime sectors and ecosystems. How can this help to fill the gaps? How can this support the transformation to a more sustainable blue economy and help create also, not least, the ocean professionals that we need for the future? So we had both an excellent 2 keynotes and a panel to discuss this, and some overall paradox were really at the basis of the discussion that are there, but we might be able to address them towards the next framework program. There's the issue of complexity. We keep adding on more complexity from oceans here and waters there to oceans and waters, for example, and adding on from a triple helix to a quadruple helix to a quintuple helix. So we keep adding on these layers of complexity. And then can this be set up against efficiency and more targeted effort? Can the bottom-up approaches be set up against the top-down and more so the directed approaches? And should excellence be set up as the opposite of inclusion and broadening efforts? And in the end, what we kept getting back to is that the complexities are a challenge, but at the same time they're they're the solution, they're what we need, and there's also the strength of the Horizon approach. So some finally important takeaways from our discussion. We should organize ourselves in a way There was a lot of good metaphors in this session, and this was an idea from the panel to organize ourselves a little bit more towards, like they do the health sectors, hospitals, university hospitals, the way they work also in when it comes to fruitful collaborations between the sectors. something to learn for the oceans and water sectors. Secondly, that we need to focus on talent development. We need to focus on skills development and capacity building, and we need to improve our capacity to share knowledge, to share infrastructure, and to share in capacity building. And we think that the KIC within water and maritime and marine sectors is really a good tool if it's well set up to address this. Bottom line, we should celebrate the complexity and the diversity of the Horizon program and keep that towards the next framework program. But on the other hand, we do need to reduce complexity in this co-creation effort. We need to align more regional, national and EU-wide governance, and we need to align regional, national and EU-wide instruments to do this. Yeah, so that's... there was a lot more that was said, but this is...
no, but I think it's a good resume, Siri. Thank you very much for this initial provocation. I would then go to health. Marius.
Yes. So the health session, we want to transform the European health care sector, and the power of...
you succeeded?
Well, we're not reached the goal yet, but... So we try to focus on the power of digitization and AI, as this is a very hot topic, and I think will be very important in going ahead. So we had 3 excellent speakers to introduce, and they joined in the panel discussion. So we all agree that there's a huge potential for using AI, but in general more digital technology to solve the challenges in healthcare. And there's a lot of different tasks that can be addressed in that sense, from like the boring, repetitive tasks and so on to more on the research side, doing drug development. But I think there's also a need to be more focused on prevention, preventive medicine, and adopt that. And but I think also one of the major potential here is to actually speed up and make science, medical science, more productive, and health science more productive. So. All of this really, it comes back to we need to focus more on interdisciplinarity in this type of research, and also not necessarily like within the research environment, but also across sectors. We need to do more co-creative research and innovation, and that is especially important in terms of developing trustworthy solutions. And I think this is not necessarily exclusive to the healthcare sector when it comes to digital solutions and AI, but I think it's as important, or maybe even more important, to do there in terms of getting adoption of new technologies, because that has been slow to actually transform the way healthcare workers and the health systems do their tasks when they adopt technology. So what do we need? We need better access to data. We have a huge potential in healthcare, in health data and population data in Europe that is a comparative advantage compared to the rest of the world, but we're not exploiting the potential. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but building on the European health data space and open science is really the way forward, to make that more simple to share data. But also, we touched upon when researchers and people provide their data to science, maybe they need to be compensated in some way to enhance that. And sharing data also in a global context is really important. Third world researchers don't have the resources to collect the same data, but if they get access to our data, then they can also contribute towards these goals. And in terms of adoption, we touched upon this constant AI problem of trustworthiness and trusting the data and the solutions that you are exposed to. And we need to also educate people about trustworthy sources. And in terms of having trustworthy healthcare solutions based on AI and technology, we probably need to develop more models by public funding, by trusted sources, and definitely where healthcare professionals are involved. And then we touched upon, we also need talents. We need computer scientists in health. So educating more computer scientists, and they should also, to a larger extent, be aware of the public trust issue in their education. And finally, we need to do more implementation research. We need to figure out why solutions work, for instance, when you implement them in Norway, and how that they can be transferred to other parts of Europe. We need more research on that. We need to be better at scaling up, and we need to involve also the industries in this work. So more collaboration, more co-creation, better access to data, I think it sums up.
Thank you very much. It was pretty clear, and also you even got an applause, so that's a good sign. And last but not least, energy. Johan.
Yeah, sure. A little bit about the backdrop of the whole session. It's called the geopolitics of energy. For those of you who were not present there, we were discussing and dealing with that we need a lot of new clean energy technology to support reaching Europe's 2030 and 2050 goals. And one of the difficulties for Europe is that those technologies that we are leaning on, it can be solar technology, solar cells, it can be electric cars and batteries, it can be offshore wind or wind technologies in general. We need to import very much of those technologies today. Today, the whole market for solar cells and batteries is ruled by China. And that's not bad in a way, but when we see that we need to have a larger energy security in Europe, we need to also have control more of the value chain. So that means that we need to manufacture many of those technologies in Europe also, in addition to what is done in other countries, and especially in China. And that has brought us to that Europe is taking the lead to bring home technologies. Bring home the solar cell technologies, bring home the wind, bring home the hydrogen and fuel cells. But it's not only that. It's also the materials that are within those technologies, which we don't have very much of. We import also these materials from other countries. So it's two ways here. One is the Net Zero Industrial Act, where we look for industrialization of those technologies, but we also have this net zero materials right? So the metals that needed is also of major importance. These are the two things we discussed, or was also presented by EU Commission earlier. Then we also had the other presentation. We had two presentations, which showed us the scale. What is the scale actually we need when we are going to, on one hand, reduce the use of fossil fuels, but on the other hand, we have to increase the use of the renewable energy sources. These scale are enormous, and it's very difficult to see how we should do it. What type of investments are needed in infrastructure, for instance, in electric infrastructure, in gas infrastructure, pipelines, where we have been using natural gas. Can that be used for hydrogen? Can it be used for CO2, to store the CO2? So here there are quite a lot of really big challenges in society. We can do research, we can do education, but do we enough of research and education to follow up those big challenges we are ahead of us? That was really discussed here at the panel, and of course one of the things that was drawn forward was not only the research in technologies as such. What about the society? What about social science, as you mentioned? Because you need to have people with you to exploit those technologies in society. You have to have a kind of, let's say, we talk very much about technology readiness level, but that also was discussed this morning, societal readiness level. How do we do that? And some of the people also mentioned that we have to start almost in the kindergarten, because we have to transform the whole society, really. Because energy sector is representing 75% of all the global emissions which we want to reduce. So the energy sector is vital to transform. So I think that the main challenge here are not only the challenges that the EU Commissions have in having the new programs at large, but it also needs to include cities and regions and the society total. I think that is attracting young people to understand and are willing to go into an educational situation where you will work with energy systems in total in the society. How should we do that to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions? I think that was one of the major things we discussed at this seminar. We had two very good presentations. We had a very good panel, which showed that both from the educational point of view, from the research point of view, and from the industry point of view, we look at the same situation. So that is the hopeful, what should I say, what we got out of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Johan. And I would like to continue the applause for the three chairs that organized this very interesting session, very interesting three sessions in parallel happened in the conference. I noticed down a lot of interesting points like the sharing of data, and I'm wondering how this imply as open as possible, as close as necessary condition due to the political framework, and probably this is going something that we're going to discuss in the panel afterwards, the need for materials import. Again, international cooperation aspects, I suspect, will be something. the need to implement the Green Deal, but the pressure that it's putting on the society, that I suspect is something we are going to discuss afterwards, and the importance of social sciences and the local and regional dimension. So these are some elements that maybe we can discuss in the final panel debate, but once again, thank you very much for your kindness. And I would like then to open officially the closing plenary of the conference by inviting to the stage, as you have heard, Green Deal, but also there is another interesting thing happened on the 15th of April, the launch of a report from the European Commission that somehow identifies the challenges and the Europe have to face from now up to 2040, proposing some approaches. So it's an honor and a pleasure to have with us today Virginie Battu-Henriksson, member of the cabinet of Maroš Šefčovič, you know, the commissioner for the Green Deal, but also for the foresight. So somehow you have this dual scope, Virginie. Tell us where we are with the Green Deal and also what we expect in the future. So you're welcome to join on the stage. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Massimo, for this introduction. I will try to raise to the expectation somehow. Good afternoon, all. It's really a pleasure to be here in this very rich conference. I was very impressed by the summaries that we just heard on the three parallel discussion, and already yesterday evening there were very interesting exchanges. With the European election just around the corner, I think, well, it's very much understanding that, Massimo, you asked me to provide you with an overview of where we are in the Green Deal and what should come next. So this is what I'm going to try indeed to do using two of the hats of my boss, the Green Deal and foresight. So looking back, I think we can say that this political mandate, perhaps more than any other, has seen major disruptions and unexpected, unpredicted events that have shaped and really reshaped, rather, policymaking in a substantial way. And of course, by that, I'm talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, which really hit the political leadership, all of us, only a few months after the beginning of the von der Leyen Commission. And later on, the illegal invasion by Russia of Ukraine, which also sent shockwaves through our economies and societies by further aggravating the crisis, both at economic and societal level. Energy prices have spiked, and this combined with increased unfair competition, production overcapacities, and limited subsidies from the part of our competitors, this has put unprecedented threats to the competitiveness of our companies with the social impacts that it entails. But we have managed to stay the course. We had promised digital and green transition. Yesterday, Roberto Vaola explained how much we have done when it comes to the digital transition. So, as you asked me, I will say a few more words about the European Green Deal. The European Green Deal is a solid, state-of-the-art, comprehensive legislating framework. And we have really come a long way. Most of the key proposals have been now adopted and have started even to bear fruit. Of course, you know about the Fit for 55 package, and this is certainly the most massive package, so I will perhaps only refer to that, otherwise it will be just a long list of a piece of legislation. But just a few elements of results. We have, in fact, managed to show that it is possible to decouple economic growth from emissions. Today, we are spending as much energy as 20 years ago, with, of course, an economy which is much larger. In fact, we reduced our emissions compared to 1990 by 32.5% when our economy grew by 67%. So it is possible. And we have also shown that we can make really good progress on renewables. And here I make a little bit the link also with the last speaker who was giving the outcome of the energy panel. Of course, there's a lot of challenges, but in May 2023, for the first time in history, the European Union produced more electricity from wind and solar than from fossil fuels. So now that the legislative framework is in place and started to bear fruit, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that the transition materializes concretely and delivers for everyone. So when the Executive Vice President took over the European Green Deal, as you may know, he wasn't from the start, it was in August, he committed to reinforce the engagement of himself, of the European Commission, with the citizen and with the private sector. And so far, he held 9 what we have called clean transition dialogues, which gather actors from industry, from all across the value chain, to discuss the concrete implementation of the green transition. And he also had multiple engagement with citizens, civil society, and local authorities. I heard it was also referred to. It is absolutely, cities in particular, are absolutely essential when it comes to the implementation of the green transition. These conversations with people, with industry, are absolutely crucial. We need to understand now, very concretely, what are the decarbonization needs and how we can concretely help all businesses to make the transition happen. We need to discuss with them, we need to understand what kind of adjustment can be done on policy and regulatory framework to make sure that it works, and exchange on ideas to how to further accelerate and increase the investment, which is indeed most needed. Last week, the Commission published a communication to take stock on what we have learned concretely of these different dialogues. So if you want to know more, I can refer you to that. But I think the main key takeaway is the fact that we need to make the business case for the green transition. The green transition must be increasingly driven by market forces. We cannot just have targets and regulation to make stakeholders, to make our industry, to make our citizens move toward the green transition. We have to make sure that there is a clear business case for it. So we need to reinforce the industrial approach to deliver on the European Green Deal. And you will see, if you are interested, that the communication highlights some concrete priorities, and actually further elements of stock taking on the overall Green Deal is foreseen in the coming week. So like Massimo said, I'd like to broaden a little bit from there, from the European Green Deal into how we should move forward after the election in the next years. And of course, it's not about looking at a crystal ball. I just wanted, to take this opportunity to talk to you about this report. So as you can see, I only have the cover page because it's such a good report that the Executive Vice President himself took my own copy. That's why I don't have it with me. It's the 4th ESPAS Global Trend Report. These reports, so ESPAS is a network of different institutions, European institutions, who gather on the topic of foresight, strategic foresight, to share analysis. And every 5 years, they design this report. This year it's called Choosing Europe's Future, and it's exactly about that. It's on purpose published just before the European election, so that it can feed and serve the debate that will come right after. Actually, I think it's by chance, but there is no better time than today to discuss these things, because as you probably know, just a few 100 meters from here in the European Council building, leaders are discussing the strategic agenda. And I'm sure that what they have on their table, along another few reports, notably this big one Enrico Letta has just released, at least this is meant for that. It's a report that analyzes the biggest global trends and propose a number of strategic choices that political leaders will have to make. These key global trends are the followings: the centrality of geopolitics, mounting pressure on economic growth, uneven demographic ramifications, environmental and climate crisis, we touch upon this, energy transition, we also touch upon this, the quest for equality, technological acceleration and convergence, health as a global challenge, this was even the topic of one of the panel, changes in where and how we live, and finally, threats to democracy. So as I mentioned, in the report, we look at the development of the different trends, and then we move on to phrase a number of key questions that leaders will have to look at. So bear with me as I read those. How can the EU establish itself as a smart global power able to navigate effectively an uncertain geopolitical landscape, acting with partners when possible, and autonomously where necessary? Second strategic choice, how can the European Union ensure that the green transition will be both effective and achieved in a socially and economically equitable way? Third, to what extent are EU policymakers willing to accept economic risks and friction in exchange for enhanced geopolitical and technological sovereignty? Fourth, is the current EU economic model fit for purpose, or does it need a major update to ensure long-term sustainability and well-being? Fifth, how can the EU regulatory framework incentivize innovation and deliver economic benefits while also safeguarding against potential harms? And finally, how can the EU strengthen opportunities for all citizens in order to prevent social fragmentation and consolidate support for the coming transitions? I think the report has a lot of very rich and good elements, but one of the things that I really think it brings is that it demonstrates very clearly how increasingly challenging the world has become, something that we feel, all of us, but it puts the words in a structured way on how the changes that we've seen, these trends that are not necessarily new, have accelerated in intensity and also in the path of the velocity that it has in terms of the changes. And it raises important questions for both our citizens, how can we cope with all these changes, and in particular when it comes to innovation and education, but also for policymakers. How do we adapt, how do we make sure that we are actually in advance of the next changes? Another key takeaway is that all of these trends that I mentioned are increasingly interconnected. So basically, this means that if you do some decision on the, let's say, the green transition, if you go for the European Green Deal, it will, of course, have an impact on the economy. This is a fact, and it sounds quite obvious, but this is the multiplicity of interaction between the different trends has accelerated, and this call for what we call in jargon somehow a wall of government approach or wall of commission approach. And this is not so easy to do in practice, but the European Union, the European Commission, as policymaker, has to have a much more integrated policy approach. I'll conclude on a final point that also is a key takeaway from this report, is that while of the many of the trends that I mentioned show growing risks and emerging threats, there are choices to be made. This means that the action of the European Union, or in potential inaction, will have an impact on the future. We can have an impact on these trends, on how they will unfold. And in fact, the more united we are across the European institutions and with our member states, the greater that impact can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very inspiring. That was exactly what I was hoping. Thank you, Virginie, because I think that part of the questions we can make then a role game with our panelists to try to answer instead of the policymakers. And let's see if our panelists will be as wise as our politicians. It will be a nice game to play, I would say. Maybe wiser, I would say. Jokes apart, you know, there is another dimension in this game that Virginie touched partially, I think, and it is the international dimension that interconnects. I mean, we talk about the Ukrainian crisis, but of course, this implies some impact on also our openness to the world. So I'm very pleased to have on stage Cristina Russo, that is going to, from DG RTD, Director of International Cooperation Directorate, soon something different, I think, but the current keynote will be openness to the world and research security in a challenging international context. Cristina, welcome. I know that you rushed to be with us today, so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Massimo. It is always a pleasure to be at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology meetings. And of course, it is also always a pleasure to be invited by you. Oops. And to take it and to be part of the events that you do organize. Yeah, it's very important to give the international perspective in this debate, and I want to start taking the words from one of the former prime ministers of the country I know best, which is Italy, who is now preparing a report, is Mr. Draghi. Virginie spoke about the Letta report, which, by the way, also has highlighted the importance of research and innovation, and of research in particular with the relaunching of the freedom of knowledge, which was something that, an idea that had come at the surface some time ago, but didn't really made it up to the political scene, so we're very happy to see it now. But I think that the same day, the day before the publication of the Letta report, the day before yesterday, Professor Draghi made a speech in La Hulpe, which I would like to refer to, particularly because he said that Europe has had the wrong focus, that we turned inwards, seeing our competitors as ourselves. We didn't look outwards enough. And in fact, in a benign international environment, we could trust the global level playing field and the rule-based economy, but the situation has changed, and hence we do need to change. And I think this is a very good introduction for the key messages that I wanted to give, is the fact that our research policy has always been open. We have an openness by default approach, which has allowed Europe to cooperate with the best researchers in the world since a long time. And I see here some of my former colleagues that were dealing with international cooperation years ago and have promoted this approach. But bit by bit, we have also realized that we needed to take some measures and to have a clear strategy that would allow us also to be to restrict this cooperation only when it was necessary. And indeed, I'm very happy to say that this modulated approach in continuing to be open, because this is important, we need to work with the best scientists in the world in order to tackle, amongst other, the global societal challenges, the green and digital transition, but we also need to be able to protect ourselves and to promote our interests. And this is something that we have clearly done with the current Horizon Europe research program, which was launched along the lines of the international cooperation strategy in research and innovation, the global approach, which was adopted by the Commission back in 2021, and which in fact organize a bit the research cooperation in order to say that by default we do remain open. We remain open to cooperation with researchers from outside the world, because it is in the interest of the European Union in order to tackle the global societal challenges. And I can give some examples, for example, related to the Green Deal, the importance of our international cooperation in research and innovation to support those, the promotion of those policies which relate to the green transition, to the blue transition. For example, through research and innovation, we have launched an alliance which puts together the main stakeholders from the North Atlantic and the South Atlantic in order to tackle the issues together with the United States, Canada, Brazil, South Africa, related to marine research. And we have now this All-Atlantic Research Alliance that has a strong value both in terms of geopolitics and science. But also we have said that with our research cooperation, we want to promote our values, which are based on the respect of the human rights, on the respect of democracy, on a level playing field for cooperation, and protect our interests. And hence, we have included in the research program, Horizon Europe, some restrictions which allow to close some of our actions in order to protect our research system and our industry if it is necessary. I will not go into details, but I would just like to say that we have triggered this possibility of restricting some actions in the subsequent work program of Horizon Europe in closing some of the topics in specific sectors such as quantum, artificial intelligence, high computing, not all the topics, some of the topics. In the work programs that we have adopted so far, we closed around 4% of the topics, so it's a small part of it. But we have made use of this possibility, and also we have, with the previous work program, we have also aligned the restrictions in the work program to the policy dialogue that we are having with a super important third country, namely China, with which we are discussing science and technology and innovation roadmap, considering that the discussions on these roadmaps were not advanced, in particular on the innovation-related conditions. We have used the possibility to restrict the program for those actions which are innovation actions that now cannot see the participation of entities from China. And last but not least, without going into too many details, yesterday the amendment of the current work program was adopted, and there is a very important restriction on the 5G, 6G calls for the so-called high-risk suppliers. I will invite you to look at it in detail. These are concrete examples, not because I want to go into details, but because I want to show to you in practice what it means, this approach, what it means remaining open with the wish to attract the best researchers to cooperate throughout the world on international cooperation in research and innovation, to attract, to contribute to solve the global challenges, but at the same time to have the political willingness and the means to have some restrictions. And all that, in a way, is precursor to the economic security strategy, which, as you know, was adopted by the European Commission on the 20th of June last year. I will not present to you the main trends of the economic security strategy, because I guess they are known to all of you, but just want to say that our work in research and innovation is a key component of these economic security strategy endeavors, to the extent that in the first package, which relates to the implementation of the economic security strategy, which was adopted by the Commission on the 24th of January, you have 5 actions 3 which relate to foreign investment, which have been adopted under the leadership of the Directorate General for Trade, and 2 which relate to research. One concerns research security. We have put on the table a proposal for a Council recommendation on research security, which, if everything goes well, and everything is going well, should be adopted by the Competitiveness Council on the 23rd of May, which in fact brings forward to the next level the work that we have done in this field, trying to develop some common instruments and guidelines at the level of the EU, with the member states, with the universities, with the research funding agencies, in terms of research security, in order to be able to continue to cooperate with researchers and universities outside Europe, but being aware of the risks and having the tools to tackle with those risks. I will not go in details there, just to say that, of course, we do respect the autonomy of the universities. In doing that, it's really very important, and the academic freedom, and that is very well highlighted in the proposal for recommendation that, again, should be adopted on the 23rd of May. Last but not least, we have put on the table a white paper on the use, on the dual use, meaning the use of research and innovation work for those technologies that have a dual use potential, both in the civil and the military field. I will not be too much detailed on that, because you have an ongoing public consultation. You need to hurry up, because it is, the delay is on the 30th of April, which puts forward 3 options. One is the status quo, if we can continue with the status quo by enhancing the synergies. The second one is the possibility to partially open a part of the successor of the Horizon Europe program to dual-use research, and the third would be to create a separate instrument for that. So this brings me to the conclusion of my intervention, which the main elements for me to underline is really the importance that all the EU politics play their game in order to really reach this balance between as open as possible, as close as necessary, what we can do in the field of research and innovation, which is also very relevant in the fora where I am, certainly in this network of very important universities. I conclude by saying that I will now be having another task in the Commission. I will be working in the Directorate for Prosperity, which is in charge of industrial leadership and competitiveness. And I want to say something very personal, that I was in Japan a couple of weeks ago with the double casquette, as they say in French, as Director of International and Future Director of Prosperity. And I visited the NIMS, the Japanese National Institutes for Materials. And in fact, when they were presenting the cooperation with the key organizations outside Europe, I've seen NTNU there, and I was very proud about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cristina. I invite you to remain, and congratulations for the new nomination. I wasn't sure if I could have spoiled it, but now you spoiled yourself, so that's good. I would like to invite now on stage to reflect and maybe to deepen a bit on the topics that I think have been excellently addressed by Virginie and Maria Cristina. Of course, Virginie Battu-Henriksson. This is my chair, eh? Don't touch it, so the others. And then Terje Andreas, the NTNU Prorector for Innovation. Pavel Svoboda, which I saw on my right, which is a European Policy Center visiting fellow, and also Terje Andreas Eikemo to continue to be provocative, as we agreed to be. No, this is my chair, I told you. There are limits to provocation, I would say. Okay, so I think we got a lot of interesting inputs, and probably I'm going also to derail from the initial preparation that I sent to you all, especially after the set of questions that Virginie touched upon for the topics of 2040. And I would like maybe to start this first round of reflections about stating, about understanding what do you think about the need to revise the Green Deal, no, to some extent. So basically touching the question that was taken on the table, how can the EU ensure that the green transition will be both effective and achieved in a socially and economically equitable way? So I know, Pavel, that you are working a bit on it, are we really succeeding? Are we really getting 67% of economic growth while reducing emissions? Is this the right way? Do we need to reduce the pressure on company? What is your opinion?
Thank you, Massimo, for the question, for the introduction and invitation. Well, I don't know if everyone has seen yesterday's Nature report from the Potsdam Institute, which is a result of a thorough 1.5 year macroeconomic modeling study. And it says that we are already committed to 19% reduction of the global GDP to 2050 on the basis of where we are today. That does not take into account the choices that will come in the future. It's very recommendable to have a look at that study because it actually puts the numbers on the table and paints the context for what will be decided about the Green Deal in the future, in the next term. And here I would say that the beauty of the EU system is that once something is out of the machinery, it is there, right? So that's where we are with the Green Deal. The package has been mostly has gone through the legislative machinery, and the next 5 years will be about implementation. And of course, the jury is out what that will mean, because I suspect that there will be lots of interpretations of the rules. There will be a lot of backsliding as well from the member states. The curious question and the interesting question is, whether the Commission will react immediately and guard the purity of the Green Deal, or whether it will be forced to enter into some sort of renegotiations. The Parliament may feel that it has less to say because everything had been already, or most of it had been already agreed. I think where a lot of discussions will be held is the just transition element of it. And here I think we definitely need more attention, more funding to the vulnerable groups. The Justice 40 initiative in the United States that accompanies the Inflation Reduction Act is an interesting case to the point. I think it should be studied actually quite carefully. The commitment to spend 40% of all the funding going for the green transition on the vulnerable groups and on addressing the challenges of the just transition. So that will be one of the main elements. But I think we need some sort of escape velocity as well. And that escape velocity will be provided primarily by investments. It will also be provided by circular economy and the uptake of the circularity, and hence market creation. And on funding, of course, the needs are enormous, and Ricoletta detailed them yesterday in the report as well. And he did propose that we basically vacuum all the funding which exists in Europe for the sake of the green transition. And I agree with that, because we have a lot of dormant funds sitting in different quarters in Europe, including with institutional investors and pension funds, and they should be mobilized. I mean, what I usually think about is like the German technological unicorns. 10% of their funding comes from US pension funds. 0.01% comes from German pension funds. So all that means is that there is a lot of funding sitting idle in different places in Europe, which needs to be activated for the sake of the green and digital transition.
Any reaction from the Commission about this? I think it was an interesting provocation.
Yes, I mean, I think that what you said also links a lot about timing. I mean, we are certainly in a specific moment in which discussions really are taking place, and there is the European Council today. So I'm not I mean, referring to any secret meeting on the importance of competitiveness and on how to competitiveness of the European Union, which was also why the President of the Commission has tasked Professor Draghi to write this report. So I think that it's important to really say that this Commission has been very serious on the Green Deal, not only in putting the objectives clearly on the table from the beginning, but in putting on the table the legislation that has been then quickly adopted by the co-legislators, and some support actions. You refer to the Just Fund, which is a very important one. And I think now the question is really how we can maintain what we have put on the table in terms of objectives, what we have achieved in terms of instruments, and maybe give this something more which is needed in order to deploy all the other instruments needed to pursue on the Green Deal, while of course doing something maybe more to have this link between the Green Deal and the competitiveness, which have not been seen something different, should not be seen different, but maybe some more incentives. And there I come back to my field of work on research and innovation. We've been very active for the Green Deal. Remember that as soon as the Green Deal was adopted, was launched by the President, we have mobilized the funds from the previous framework program, Horizon 2020, for a Green Deal call. But I think we should do something really more in order to enable, give the technologies which would help Europe to put in place the instruments to reach the objectives of the Green Deal. All that is what is ongoing thinking. Of course, what the next Commission will be doing, we can know more when we will be, who's going to be the President and how it will be composed. But the current thinking is along those lines.
Thank you, Cristina. And I think this links very nicely what you said also about the investment and the need for innovation to one of the other questions that has been provided by Virginie in her presentation, which is how to ensure that the EU regulatory framework incentivizes innovation and delivers economic benefit while safeguarding against potential harms. I mean, Turil, I think, as in a role of Prorector for Innovation, I mean, on one side, what are the needs for universities in this sector, and what is the role that university can play in this sense to help, of course, the Green Deal to achieve the technology it needs, and also maybe to continue to contribute to European competitiveness.
Yes, thank you, Massimo, and also thank you to the keynote speakers here today. I think they both came up with very important issues, and I'm also very happy to hear about your vision about how we will look upon the future and also the challenges and the issue that you mentioned. For Norway, and you, Maria, you also mentioned that you see, the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Japan when we were there, and I must say, for Norway and for NTNU as a national university, which is, of course, specialized in technology, but also social science, we have a broad perspective, but also contribute in the energy transition, especially. We have networks all around Europe, but also internationally. And we also do a lot of national funding. I just want to mention that recently the government put into 8 new centers of environmental friendly energy, where NTNU is a partner and also hosting all of them. So this is important for NTNU, and I see also that combining national funding with the European funding mechanisms is very important for making those collaboration across Europe that we actually need in the energy transition as well. So, and I think one of the issues to really make Europe, to make the transition, but also make Europe a competitor in this respect, is all the talent. The talent, the brains, the competence that we need and that we are quite good at in Europe should be strengthened. So really to make mechanism both for excellence in research but also bridging so that we can really make new technologies and competence into impact when it comes to the energy transition and Green Deal as well, will be important in the future. And I think there is actually the university is very important. So.
Thank you. I noticed you were taking notes. You want to say something, Virginie, or feel free, eh?
Well, I was...
As per instruction, feel free to intervene. Just ask.
No, I think the last point was indeed I was taking note because I think it's very important to... I haven't mentioned it explicitly, but the need for skills, for green skills, is one of the many elephants in the room of the green transition. And in particular, I was, as I learned about these things in the recent months, something that really was interesting for me was to know that, okay, you have a lot of, like when we talk about green skills, you can think about the engineers to create technologies for the green transition, but there are also things that are much more concrete. To put the solar panels, you have to have certain skill, and at this point in time, we don't have enough. And in some cases, it can actually hinder the development of solar panels. But also, what's actually the most missing is the lack of skills in the financial industry, the lack of people who can analyze projects and decide whether or not to fund them. And when we know how much funding is fundamental, and in particular private funding, because we're not going to manage, which is the public money, it is one of the questions we have to put ourselves, and where university can close that circle using the research to train people that will have the capacity to analyze the project of the future and decide on their funding.
Interesting. And on the skills, I think I would like also to challenge the other panelists, maybe Terje and Turid, because a recent study shown that industry do not see university as upskilling providers, meaning that we are maybe not too much skilled to provide skills. Just allow me the alliteration. So, and I think that is more and more into importance because we are living a second industrial revolution, and meaning that new technologies are being injected, and as Virginie was outlining, then there is a need of specialized skills today that are more near to the reserve producer than to specialized companies providing upskilling and reskilling. So what is, in your opinion, the situation at university level at the moment is the capability to provide lifelong learning, micro-credential, and so on? No, the other side, yeah.
Okay. Yes, you're bringing up education. You're bringing up inequality. You're talking about social consequences. And it's all really attached. You're talking about innovations. Yeah, I have some homework for the audience. When you get back home, you can try to Google the theory of the fundamental causes of inequality, developed by Link and Phelan, two US sociologists. And the theory says that whenever we implement a new technology, a new program, a new innovation, and we spread this in a society, we implement this in a society, it will always increase inequalities. Always. Unintentionally, with the best intentions, but it will increase inequalities. Because it is not a coincidence who gets access to the technology, who has the knowledge to use it, who has the networks to get acquainted with it, who has the power to get it, and even those who develop technologies and implement these programs are also on the other end of the power structure. So this is already an equality kind of mechanism there. You mentioned skills as a changing of skills as a consequence, as a social consequence of programs, the Green Deal specifically. Yeah, so I try to think, I mean, what are the main social challenges? Definitely, there will be job losses, as we know, in part of the industry that we will see less of. But also, it will create more jobs, but jobs that require more skills. And this is one of these mechanisms that will generate inequalities. So whenever we have to adapt to a new societal system, this is the mechanisms at play. But as long as we are aware of these mechanisms, if we also give us the tools to counteract this development and make sure that the changes are for the benefit of all of us. But there are also other societal challenges, such as so whenever there are incentives to improve like housing conditions in terms of technological like clean energy, this might increase the prices in houses in any areas and would not benefit those with less income. And so there are, and also think about the increased awareness that there is now in the society about new ways of living, and this awareness is also unequally distributed in society. So those who are most flexibly able to change behavioral patterns in a lot of areas are also those who are better off. Now the Green Deal stipulates that okay, we need to focus on we should not leave anyone behind, no one left behind, but actually that is not the exact right phrasing, because it means that we need to focus on those who are far left off, those who are the most advantaged. But we need to focus on the whole social structure. There are increasing inequalities in education, in wealth, in income. And these inequalities are also the fundamental cause of the climate crisis we're in the first place. So we need to also treat the whole system. And otherwise, we will treat the symptoms and not the disease, let's say. So I hope that was from skills to a lot of other things.
I think it was an interesting set of provocation. I noticed she's taking notes, maybe for the next foresight report. So that's good. When you see Commission taking notes, means that you're doing a good job. Turila, I noticed you wanted.
Yes.
You should take. Do you want a pen?
I have when it comes to skills, and when it comes to educating the young, important talents, and all those people who are actually going into the industry, into the public sector, into the society, I think one of the most important issues for the Commission and also the programs in the future would be to facilitate collaboration. We see, based on experience, that if you have a good direct collaboration between universities and industry, you have a transfer and mobility of knowledge, of technology, of people, which I think is very, very important in the future. And then you get also impact of all the research. So I know the in Finland, they have this remarkable 3,000 PhDs program that I really think is interesting, making not only academic careers for PhDs, but also research careers within the industry and within the public sector. And I think it will be important to increase the competence on a PhD level, both in the industry and the public sector as well. So collaborative project will be important in the future.
And you got a reaction from the Commission.
Yeah, although I'm not taking note, Massimo passed me the mic. So I know, of course, this is very important, and I would like to underline that collaboration is at the core of the EU research and innovation program. I mean, if you take the Horizon Europe program, which let me say also, because it's something we should be very proud as European, it is the biggest multilateral research program in the world. And it mobilized 95 billion euros, and it has 3 pillars, out of which the second one, which is far the bigger one is really about collaborative research. And when I say collaborative, I would like to highlight 2 points. First of all is that the participation to the Pillar 2 action of Horizon Europe is done through joint projects, which are open to all research entities, be them public and private. So we do also invite and promote the public and private participation in the Horizon Europe programs. And then, of course, we do have a specific partnership with the industry, which are really designed in order to merge the efforts of the public and, of course, the private, the industry, on some specific key issues that are important for the European Union. In my future job, I will have the chance to lead several of these partnerships. And the question for me now is really that those partnerships have to be really linked to the strategic sectors in which we do want to operate. And here I can make an example. The Commission has adopted on the 27th of February a communication on strengthening the European approach towards advanced materials, which is key for many of the objectives also of the Green Deal. And there we would launch a dedicated partnership with the industry there. And it's that, so the key strategic objectives, partnerships in these objectives, and also the fact of being able, a bit like we said before, as open as possible, as close as necessary, here to be able to really combine the interests of the public with which involves also the need to involve the private institution in a way that we do something which is really in the interest of the EU, of our society, finding the right balance between which are the advantages of having the private into the public partnerships, so which are the duties and the opportunities that exist.
I notice Pavel have learned the lesson, so he's asking to intervene. Thank you very much. Please, Pavel.
Yes, because I wanted to draw our attention also to the scale of the transformation on the labor market, and we know that, of course, every day. But one of the interesting measures is the vacancy rate, which is currently at a historically high level. I think it's Belgium, Netherlands, Germany with top rates of 4.7%. So it has never been as high as that, which also tells us a lot about what's happening, what's the demand for jobs. I think in terms of learning, hybrid forms will predominate. So yes, university education, but also learning in the real world. Students sometimes come up to us and say, well, they hope they don't have too many classes and lectures because they need time to learn. It's an oxymoron, right? But it does express a certain reality of the day, meaning that they do want to benefit from this experience in the real world. And we have to get used to it, right? Because it is the age of technological acceleration. We started talking in this panel about the green transition. Well, the breakthrough technologies are a super important part of the equation. The International Energy Agency, when they first drafted their net zero scenario 2050, they attributed 50% to the technologies which at the time did not exist, and it was only 3 years ago. Recently, they corrected to 35%, but even 35% is still a lot. That means these are the technologies that, well, hopefully are emerging, that someone is thinking about, that are being prototyped. So people who would speak for these technologies are not in this room because they are busy conceptualizing, prototyping. They are not there yet in order. But what I'm saying is that the system needs to be open also to these breakthroughs. And we cannot simply assume that incumbents will solve the question, because with the best of will and intentions, they do not have the right technologies as we speak to address the question fully.
Thank you very much. I would like to just a little bit change argument as we are running quite fast toward the end of the session. And as I learned from my Norwegian colleagues, I have to be ending at 3:30, and I would like also to have some questions from the public. So I would come back to Cristina, because of course, in all this framework, we are still not touching too much about the international dimension, which is one factor of potential growth, but also a threat. As it is today, as open as possible, as close as necessary, is of course a necessary condition that we need to put, and we still have a lot of threats here and there, because we have a lot of open data that everyone can access, which can potentially be threats in terms of security, like knowing the level of production of things, or if we have drought problems somewhere, somehow this data can be used against Europe. So how international cooperation contributes to deliver to the Green Deal, especially due to the latest changes in the scenario, and what challenges can be foreseen in the current fierce competition for clean technologies? They open it.
I think that, as I mentioned beforehand, what we do in international cooperation in research and innovation is to try to target as much as possible the work and the collaboration with our partner countries towards reaching the objectives related to the Green Deal. Not later than today, I was in the Research Innovation UFM platform, where UFM stands for Union for the Mediterranean, where we have developed clear roadmaps for innovation, research and innovation cooperation in order to tackle the green transition through specific topics on climate change, energy, and others. We have done the same exercise, for example, with the African Union in our what we call the European Union African Union Innovation Agenda. We are doing also the same exercise with regards to the industrialized countries. I will not mention them all, but you are aware that President van der Leyen has relaunched the transatlantic dialogue with the United States through the Trade and Technology Council, and we had the specific work stream on clean technologies. Same we did with India, with which we also have launched the President has launched 2 years ago a Trade and Technology Council. So we are really targeting the collaborative actions towards those areas which are necessary for us to be going towards the green transition. Now, the question is how much we can be open and how we have to close. This relates to really seeing which are the framework conditions for collaboration. And we have been very much keen in focusing with those countries with which there is, if you want, a higher risk in terms of research security, and I remain state agnostic here, but you know that where the risks come from, in order to target the cooperation activities on research related actions which have a very low level of TRL. So, for example, let me make an example without mentioning, I will mention a country. Let's take China. On China, we have developed a specific flagship for a cooperation in research in the field of climate change. But this cooperation is designed in order to really remain at the level of research, where we do have an interest, and not touching upon technological development. So to be very practical, we are trying to remain open to have a cooperation geared to the objectives of the Green Deal, to discuss concrete actions with the key partners at international and regional level, and to then, in the modalities of cooperation, be able to close in those areas where we do see a risk for Europe in terms of technology development. We don't have time now, but also this work is linked also to the work that the European Commission has launched and is carrying out with member states on the critical technologies. You know that in a communication in October last year, 10 areas of critical technologies were identified, with 4 the work has been front-loaded, and we are also seeing, we need to sit there to evaluate how we can then have the spillover of this work on the actions that we do at the international level, also on research innovation. But on that specific work strand, we are still at the level of discussions within member states.
Thank you, Cristina. As we are entering the last 10 minutes of this panel debate, I would like to open the floor for possible questions from the audience. And then I will take the right for the final question to all the panelists. But before, I would like also to hear if you have any question. I have one there. I was looking in that direction. I was suspecting something was coming.
Thank you, Massimo. Katarina Glansen, Research Council of Norway. I have a question, and it was intrigued by what you mentioned, Virginie, about the 5 scenarios or policy decisions, discussions with the foresighting. And one of it relates to the policy development. Do we have the right policies to innovate in accordance to where we would like to go? And I find that intriguing. We haven't discussed policies in the complexity today. But it is a key component in the fact that the framework programs for the last 2 periods, to a much larger degree, is responding to EU politics. And in this scenario, the politics are becoming more and more complex. In the oceans, where we probably have, like, at the international level, huge amount of laws, the same at the sectoral levels, and at the regional levels. So for stakeholders to understand and for researchers to understand, to navigate in this complexity and to ensure that we are encouraging innovation becomes more and more difficult. So I think we need to simplify complexity, and there is a paradox because we are building a system of a green transition on systems which haven't functioned, which has brought us to where we are. So my question to the panel is, do we also need to exnovate when we are innovating? And I'll give you an example of what exnovating is. You're seeing a development of car share that requires a different legal framework than a growth theory. So my question is, are those dimensions which from social economic policy, legal framework will also be brought to the table? We've been working a lot on this in the Sustainable Blue Economy Partnership and of course haven't found a solution. So decomplexifying complexity and exnovating when we innovate. Thank you.
I suspect it's a question for the Commission, but you want to answer? Yeah?
I will try because, well, you referred to complexity, and this is a very complex question. But as I understand it, the question is whether we have the right framework at this point in time to foster innovation. And this is actually a question that I remember was one of the key topics when I was a student, because we know that innovation sometimes is faster in other places of the world. When we have a higher quality, by many standards, higher quality pure research, and the framework in which we operate probably has to do a lot. Perhaps you would have more to say on the links, and you already touched upon it, between research and innovation. When it comes to the legislating framework, at the level of the European Union, what I can say is that, well, among the many hats of my executive vice president, there's also the responsibility for better regulation. And better regulation is probably not the most, let's say, sexy topics that you can find in the European Commission, but it has become. It has become a key priority, in particular in the context of the green transition. You know, I mentioned these clean transition dialogues that we have with the industry, and the feedback is clear and blatant. There is too much requirements, too much complexity in the feedback on the reporting obligation that we put on companies. And the president herself has put the topic of simplification on top of the agenda. So I would say that since a lot of this work has to be done mostly at the level of the administration, this is likely to continue. When we hear some companies telling us, I applied for these projects and I've so far sent to the Commission 4 million words. 4 million words of reporting. We can all understand that clearly there's a way to improve this. So I would say that when fostering innovation is multifaceted, and creating a framework for it is not an easy task, but you rightly pointed at the importance of making sure that we have more simple obligation for stakeholders, and I can at least say with my level of confidence that we are trying to do our best, and this has become much more prominent in the recent months.
I take a couple of extra questions. One here, the blonde lady on the third row.
Thank you. My name is Karin Totland. I'm from the Research Council of Norway, based here in Brussels. I want to address the Commission with a question about international collaboration, given maybe that there are quite a few Norwegians in the room today. We heard we have heard about China several times. We talked about association, and we have, of course, now also associated more countries in the recent years. So I guess there will also be a need to differentiate more between different kinds of non-EU countries. So to what extent do you foresee having to do more of a differentiation in the future when it comes to opening and closing up the calls? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I think that if you see the approach that we have taken with the global approach, there is already a modularity in the way that we connect with countries outside Europe, with, of course, the closest relationship that we have is with the countries with which we are associated. And then, of course, we have a different approach with the industrialized countries and the other regions. I don't like to call developing regions, but maybe it's an easier way to mention them. Now, association is a key, has been also a key novelty of this program in terms of the possibility of associating industrialized countries with which we share values and principles which are not in the proximity of the European Union in geographical terms. And we have been very keen when we have put in motion the possible restrictions which exist under Article 22.5 of the Horizon Europe regulation to really be making a careful analysis to the role, to the situation of the associated countries in order to operate those restrictions in a way as limited as possible with regards to the associated countries. Now, of course, the question is when associated countries, the category of associated countries becomes broader, then one should maybe look at that in further details to which topic one or the other associated countries can participate or not. And that depends on the substance of the topic and on the situation of the associated country. So we don't have a general way of, I don't have a general reply. What I would like to say to you is that we operate this restriction on a case-by-case basis, really looking at the substance of the topic. And with the associated countries, we really try to have an approach which is as comprehensive as possible, in line with the objectives of having those countries associated to the European Union Research and Innovation Programme, certainly taking into account the differences that exist amongst those countries.
Last question, short.
It will be
short, Adele. We are running out of time. It's open, don't worry. There they are operating.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, it will be very short. Thank you. So I'm from the European Energy Research Alliance. My question is quite short. We spoke, we know that competitiveness is really at the center of the debate today. When you look at the definition of competitiveness, it often relates to growth, economic growth, but it also relates often to the notion of ability to improve the quality of life, which then refers to probably not only economic perspective. Of course, when we look at the competitiveness report, if I look at the competitiveness report on the low carbon technologies associated with the State of the Union, we're strictly looking at the competitiveness in the context of a trade competition, so the financial element only. And my question here is the Commission considering maybe to integrate non-financial elements into the notion of competitiveness, which of course would also suppose that we introduce level playing field elements in the policy that we need to implement to protect the Union.
Virginie.
Well, actually, thank you very much for this question, because this allows me to talk about another report. So the Commission has published over the past 4 years strategic foresight reports, and the last one that we had last year actually put that question not about competitiveness, but about growth, and about how we can measure and take account of the need for well-being, the need for sustainability in our objective. So this was basically the proposal of adjusted GDP. Because indeed, the pure economic growth, as we have conceived it so far, is probably not fully in sync anymore with the aspiration, notably of the younger generation. We don't not only aspire to live in a rich society, we want also societies that are sustainable, where we can breathe fresh air, where nature is healthy. And all of these elements perhaps should be indeed reflected in how we measure in our main economic indicators. When it comes to competitiveness, this would indeed be a natural element. If we were to have this adjusted GDP, then we would actually compare very differently and especially when we look in the longer to main competitors of today. But indeed, I would say that right now the debate is about, let's say, more traditional competitiveness. Although that element of sustainability is also taken into account. Let me explain why. The way we look at competitiveness when we say we need to guarantee competitivity of companies as we strive for a green transition, it's because we have seen that all competitors are making use of subsidies of local content requirements for their own companies that put our companies at disadvantage. And the efforts they make in being more sustainable, too often they're not well, they're not rewarded for it, and sometimes they're even punished for it because it is more costly. And by that, I of course, refer to procurement processes. So a lot of the reflection at the moment is, and there are some instruments already in place to have non-price criteria in procurement to make sure that those companies that are most sustainable can be rewarded for it. And the other aspect of that is how we deal on trade. How can we make full use of a trade defense mechanism to make sure that competitiveness is not just on price, but also at the way we produce things?
Thank you. I would like to close, because otherwise we stay here for the whole night, and there is plenty of other topics that I would like to challenge you, but time is running. With the final question for Turil, Terje, and Pavel. And we have heard a lot of ingredients that are somehow going to influence our future to some extent. So, reflecting about FP10, which are the ingredients? Mention 3 that you would like to see there appearing in the program. Who would like to start? Maybe it's off. Yeah.
This is working. Very important question, Massimo. And first, I would definitely say that the next framework program should strengthen excellence in research, but simultaneously bridging research and innovation. I think, as is now, for example, the bridging between Pillar 1 and 3 is not good enough. So, really, focusing on excellence, but bridging into innovation is my first point. The second is collaboration, enhancing collaboration across countries, across organizations, academia, industry, public sector, and so on. This will be very important in the next framework program. And my third point is, I think, as we have discussed today as well, simplification. Thank you.
Pavel.
Thank you so much. So my 3 top, at least, wishes for the list would be aggregation of funding and clustering. It's partly done by the mission approach, but there's also a bit of crowding out effect, meaning if you're not part of the mission, you get definitely less funding. And then there are lots of small projects. So it's a little bit like plankton. We support everything that is relevant, and that's obvious. There is merit in that. But we often don't get the value out of it because it is too small, right? So aggregation of funding would be one. Disruptive innovation would be second. There are inroads, but that needs to go much further and much broader. There are a lot of actors who would never dare to apply for European grants. A lot of companies. Because they don't like to be in a 20 large consortium. So that needs to be simplified also for the sake of disruptive innovation. And I very much like the question about systems transformation. I think we need to have that element integrated into the equation. I'm a member of the Siri group on the economic and societal impact of innovation that advises DG Research. And we are debating the question whether productivity should be redefined in order to be more anchored on resource use. And that, I think, is a very relevant question. Of course, one should not assume that the world will stop and wait for us to solve this equation, right? So there are a lot of unsustainable developments with China, especially 90% of the solar panel global market. This is completely unsustainable, right? So we need to enter that debate on systems transformation and address it properly, but without sort of closing our eyes and forgetting that there is actually a very serious reality out there to be addressed. I don't think it's either or. It's meaning that we can look at both of these challenges and find a solution.
Thank you. And last but not least, Terje.
And I'm just going to mention one thing, some higher the stakes here. I'm being a bit more...
You have 3, but you choose one.
I choose one.
Okay.
Because everything else goes into this. It's about reducing inequalities, because that should be a key policy priority and research priority, and not just those who are worst off. It's about the whole social gradient. I mean, there is an 18 years gap in healthy life expectancy in Europe. And this is causing social unrest, lack in trust in institutions, and it may also influences our abilities to obtain our dreams, our educational dreams, but also other dreams in life, societal participation. So by reducing inequalities, we are getting a lot of positive output for the society at large. So that's what I would focus on.
Okay,
and,
thank you.
I hope you all agree.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I would like to add invest in education because it makes your life longer, as Terje demonstrated in his study, and so it's time to give more money to universities. Jokes apart, we have, of course, a little gift to thank you for your time. We are into the rules of the Commission, don't worry. It's less than 50 euros value, but it's very fancy. It's different for you because you already got the other one. So that's why. I would like to ask my Vice Rector to also close officially the conference. Turiel?
Yes.
Probably the microphone is...
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Are we there? Yes. Yeah. Okay. I would like to thank you all for joining this year's conference. I would thank all involved in the panel discussion, all the attendants from the commissions, and all the, really making this a very worthwhile discussions and a conference about what we actually wanted it to be, a discussion about the policy, the future, how things, the program is working today, but also about how we would like it to work in the coming years. And finally, I will give a warm applause to the Brussels office and Massimo for making all the arrangements.
Not only me, also the organizing committee, Siri, Marius, Johan, and my team, Kaya, Alicia, Andrea, somewhere in the room, there is, and Sturla outside. So, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the conference this year. It's the 8th time we are doing it, so I hope there will be a number 9. I will discuss with my boss the budget. Have a nice afternoon, and thank you again. Bye.